Hello, everyone. How do you do? My name is Malik L. Train, host of Health Awareness Talk. I'm certified fitness trainer, clinical hypnotherapist, also Reiki master. Wow! Today we have Raja Yoga instructor Gagan Hunter. He's here today to teach us about Raja Yoga, how to develop the potential of our mind. I mean, a lot of things was going on. How would you like to be able to develop your mind to help you in your pursuit of achieving a scholarship, an actual school scholarship for making the dean's list, or for achieving for in school, becoming a star athlete in sports and stuff? I mean, that would be just so amazing. But the only way that we'll be able to do that is to learn how to release the potential within our own mind. But how do we do that? Nobody has ever taught us how to learn or how to take our powers of observation and to release the potential that we actually have, which is within our brain. Gagan, hey, how you doing?
Great. I'm doing fantastic.
Okay, super. So Raja Yoga, what exactly is that?
Well, Raja Yoga is a branch of yoga. There are, of course, many yogas. There's Kundalini Yoga. There is Karma Yoga. Many different branches of yoga. But Raja Yoga means the king's yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And Raja Yoga is what I call the integration of all the 8 limbs of yoga. So a gentleman by the name of Patanjali codified the system. So within Raja Yoga, we have asana, so the physical postures. We have pranayama, which is the breathing aspect or the breathing techniques. We have something called jama-yama, which most people don't talk about, but these are the moral codes that one should live by. And so in that yama, you'll find things like non-harming, non-stealing. You know, they're kind of like the 10 Commandments that one can live by. And then we have things called pratyahara, which means withdrawing of the sense organs. We have dhyana, which is the concentration. Dhyana, which is meditation. And then we have samadhi. So these are all the different limbs within Patanjali's system, which we call Raja Yoga.
Okay, now what is samadhi?
Samadhi means bliss or awakening, or you're in a very trance-like state. You are in samadhi, which means you're in a bliss state. Or like Buddha talks about becoming awakened. You're in an awakened state. Your consciousness is elevated. So you have merged with the universe, and so all access to knowledge and information you have. All awareness of consciousness, you've merged with big consciousness.
Okay.
And that's the goal.
All right. Well, samadhi is that one where you're reading about the Akashic records or whatever, and you can actually.
Yes, we were talking a little bit about the Akashic record, where all information about the earth is stored. But you're definitely in a more connected to the universe. So when one is in samadhi, they are fully awakened, a fully awakened human being.
Okay. Now, we know the case for samadhi. What we consider example of the powers that can be attained through samadhi yoga is be something like what happened with Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, how he was be able to diagnose what a person had and be able to cure it using the information.
I would say partially. Let's just look at the concept. If we were able to access the full potential of our brain. So scientists are saying we use between 10 and 5% of our brain, okay? But what if we had all 100% access to that information, that our brain was fully awakened 100%? That's when we would be we would be gods and goddesses. We would have access to all information, be able to manifest things, to move beyond time and space.
Okay.
So Edgar Cayce was able to access certain aspects of that awareness. because he was a clairvoyant and a psychic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Edgar Casey. The most interesting thing to me with Edgar Casey wasn't so much about him being a clairvoyant or a psychic. The most interesting thing to me about him was actually you could use what he was telling you and it was correct. People had diseases and stuff, and they'll come to him, and he would say, you even didn't have to tell him. Only thing that was given to him was just a name, and he'd be able to tell you what was wrong with you, and then he'd be able to tell you exactly what you needed in order to get rid of that. And to me, that's kind of what my shows or whatever is about, is learning how to access more of our potential as human beings in order to help to solve world problems, both for ourselves and also others. So that's what Samadhi, which is also part of Raja Yoga, that's what Samadhi Yoga actually is reaching that blissful state in order that we
Correct.
can access other powers within ourselves. That's very interesting because nobody has never taught me even an inkling on how to achieve that,
Well, this information has been hidden for many, many, many thousands of years. Some of the ancient societies and civilizations knew about it. The ancient Egyptians also knew about it. They had different names for it. You look at in India, which was the ancient world of Indus Kush.
Mm-hmm.
So you had certain sages and yogis that would live in the forest and would be totally connected to nature and totally connected to mastery of themselves to be able to open the door to these pathways or this information, this awakening.
Oh.
So it has been around, but it has never really been available to the masses like the information is now. We're in the Aquarius age.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the age of enlightenment, of new information. It's a new time. So many of the old ways of learning are just that, old. And we need to embrace new ways of learning, which we're going to talk about, using some ancient techniques.
Mm-hmm.
But new ways of learning, new ways of being,
Okay. Now,
new paradigm shift.
yeah, definitely a new paradigm shift. Tell me, what do you is that withdrawal of sex or withdrawal of scent?
Uh, no, that's withdrawal of the senses.
Withdrawal of the senses. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Senses. I guess withdrawal of sex would be celibacy.
And how do you, as a Raja Yoga person, feel about celibacy?
Well, I think it's good for some people. I think historically it has been understood that for particularly a man and a woman, but for many of the sages who were celibate, the distraction of the sexual energy was a distraction for many of them. So they would stay away from it. They would avoid it, saying that you could use those sexual energies to harness them, to pull their energy up, to use them for your creativity. But there's also other schools of thought that show that, of course, sexuality and sex is a natural a way of being. It's how we got here with a physical body. So it is a very natural and a powerful tool. So one, instead of avoiding it, because that which you repress, when you repress something, it oftentimes has a negative, or I should say, it has some side effects of when you repress an emotion. And so instead of repression emotion, you learn to express the emotion, but to express it in a positive way, which that energy, that sexual energy, which is some of the most powerful energy on the planet, you are able to supplement or use that energy to actually go to higher states of consciousness.
Okay.
So it actually can be used to elevate your consciousness, but it also needs to be done in a way, unlike what way in which sex is promoted today. But this is done in a very sacred manner, in a very loving manner, where you're using the energies. And of course, one has to learn these techniques. One has to be in good shape, number one. Have a good sound body. And, unfortunately, most folks, when you talk about sex or sexual activity, that activity may only last about 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be very difficult for one to reach any higher states if their body is not attuned and they are not adept at mastering of the sexual energy.
Okay.
So but that's really for another show.
That's really such a show because me and Medusa was talking what you call it today. Does mastering of that other show, so to speak, does that mastering of the that energy, does that include ejaculation by any chance or copulation?
Actually, it would. What we would say it would require, particularly for the male, to retain his ejaculation or retain his semen, to be able to withhold the semen, to be able to pull the energy back up into his body, so that the energy could rise up the Kundalini, up and get to the Sasahara chakra, which is the crown chakra.
Right.
So it would require that mastery to be able to retain your semen, so be able to control your ejaculation.
Okay, that's a esoteric thing.
And
it
would be a mastery to control that.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It would be a master to control that.
The master of all masteries.
No.
That's right.
But people's actually attained it from a lot of people.
Quite.
Yeah, people
There's
actually attained it. Yeah.
Quite an amount of literature about it in we talk about the Karma Sutra,
Mm-hmm.
but also too in Taoism there's quite a body of texts that talk
Mm-hmm.
about certain emperors in China that were able to master that technique, and there's actually things written about how they were able to do that and master that energy.
Okay. So,
Yes, and actually it gave them longevity,
yeah.
because when a man ejaculates,
Mm-hmm.
which most men don't know and most women don't know, a man loses in terms of in nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
1 tablespoon of semen is equivalent to 2 pints of blood in nutrients.
Wow.
So that's why generally when a man ejaculates, the game's over.
I hear that. Also, another topic, what you call it. So, you for or against masturbation?
Put him on the spot. Put him on the spot.
I would have to say, what's the outcome of it? If the outcome is just simple self-pleasure, or if the goal is to self-mastery. So I'm all about self-mastery.
There you go.
So if it doesn't lead to any self-mastery, what's the point? Then it's just simple pleasure.
It is simple
Stimulation.
pleasure.
It's just simple stimulation.
Now, the only reason that I asked you that, because on the mastery of this sexual energy, if you're not ejaculating, then you're not really masturbating, right?
No, you're having sex.
You're so crazy.
Making love.
No, it isn't about this energy thing. But a lot of times, from a Christian perspective, I was taught that it was wrong. In other words, you're supposed to use that energy in order to attain higher levels of spirituality. That's why.
And I would have to say, maybe for most people that would be true, because you see in this society how everything is abused and misunderstood. So you just look at food, for example, how we use food, and why there is such an issue of obesity with food. So one needs to be study and train, and they need to have a proper partner that also understands it from the female perspective as well. So you have to complement the male and the female.
Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up, Goggin, is that for sex ed and stuff that they be giving us in schools, back when you're in middle school, especially in high school, that sexual energy begins to arise, and most people just don't know what to do with it other than just to hold it. And if you hold it and if you're aroused, you start to get problems because you don't know how to use it. You don't know what to do with it. You know how to channel the energy or properly to release it and whatever. So I think that having classes like that, or for sexuality and yoga, it needs to be taught in schools or whatever. If they're going to be teaching sexual ed, if they're going to be teaching sexual ed, if they're going to be teaching you how to be celibate, so to speak, wait until you get married or whatever, they can at least teach you exercises on how to use that energy.
So in that sense, I would say yes. The use of masturbation would be appropriate.
Right, because it could get you in trouble if you don't. I mean, if you
Right.
can't hold it, if you don't can't hold it, and if you can't, what you say, you try to repress it, but you can't transmute
Yeah.
it. You can't
You got
transmute
to
it.
transmute it, right?
Yeah, if you can't transmute it, it's like a bomb. It just explodes, and you do stuff that you don't supposed to do. You know, it come out
Right.
as aggression or whatever.
Right.
But if they
Right.
had if they had that type of that withdrawing scent, and if they had taught that particular yoga things, people, it would be a lot easier for you to stay celibate if you had to. Because when I was growing up, especially in the church, the only thing that was told me was just you just don't do it. But they don't that, and that was it. Okay. So when you get these urges and stuff, you know, you pray to God, and that's simply it. But
Well,
go ahead.
in that case, it would actually would be better for someone, just in my opinion, actually
Mhm.
to masturbate
Yeah.
than to go out and do something, very harmful to another person
Right.
because they were sexually repressed.
Right.
So instead of sexual assault,
Mhm.
which is way too prevalent in our society, it would be better definitely in that situation,
And
than to go out and to commit that act.
well, and that, and the fact is the people play upon your feelings or upon your heat when you're in heat. People can actually feel that. Some people are sensitive to that, and they'll start to work your feelings and wear down your willpower. And you have sex with somebody that you didn't even want to have sex with just because you was
Yes.
in
Well,
heat. You know.
I think you brought up a very interesting word when you said heat. So we think of heat, we think of definitely an animal urge.
Mhm.
So that is definitely the mammal side of us. And what yoga is really to get us out of our lower self into our higher self. So that is really what the practice of yoga, one of the great benefits is to move from the lower self, the lower urges into the higher self.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And that's one of the great benefits of practicing yoga
Mhm.
because one knows how to begin to use that energy, move that energy. Oftentimes, just mere exercise, doing the exercises will help calm the nervous system,
Mhm.
relax the stress, and one will begin to have greater control over these urges
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, definitely. 'Cause we notice a big, especially in the black community, we notice a big rise in STD, especially HIV and AIDS, you know, due to not properly being able to utilize one's sexual energy, you know, and they'll be stuck on that HIV cocktail for life simply due to not being educated enough on how to deal with one's sexuality or that sexual energy, you know. And I find that to be very sad. And you see this very prevalent in black colleges,
Right.
you know. So this type of course or what you have to offer is something that is very unique, that I wish that a lot of people would just simply to investigate in order that they can help to increase their potential. Because the number one thing in your life is your health. Okay.
Right.
Without your health, you won't be able to go to school and do everything you're supposed to. You won't be able to get that scholarship money. You won't be able to work a job. And sexuality is part of your health. And a lot of people don't like to think about that. So not only do we have water, air that we got to breathe, and water that we got to drink, and food that we got to eat and meditate and all other types of stuff. We have sexual needs. We have a sexuality part of ourselves that needs to be addressed as part of our health modality as well, in order for us to be healthy human beings. And that is one particular modality that I see at the very bottom of everyone's list. But the feeding those needs or taking care of that sexuality is at the very bottom of number one's list. But if you check in reality, that's the number one thing that, especially men, that's what they think about. And that's the number one thing that's actually killing a lot of people.
That is true. But once again, it's learning how to properly use this natural urge. Knowledge of oneself, learning your body, learning about your emotions. Your emotions are very, very important.
Yeah.
Of course, as men, we are taught to suppress our emotions. So learning how to express our emotions in a natural way, in a way that's protective too, because oftentimes when men do show their emotions, it's not always in a very protective way. We're told to suck it up.
Yeah.
Stop crying. Don't show any emotions. Be tough.
Right.
But we are multifaceted human beings, so emotions are definitely an important part of being a human being.
Yes, definitely is. Definitely is.
And that's part of health.
It is. It's definitely part of health. But like I was saying, that particular part is something that a lot of people just don't address, and they don't even want to include it as something that's a necessary part of life in order to address. And I think if your techniques like that were taught and how to use that energy, it's called sexual transmutation. Okay.
Sexual transmutation.
Right.
Yes, there are many. And even if you're familiar with Napoleon Hill, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, people may not know about the book, but he was a great motivational speaker and a transformational leader. I think he was in the 20s and 30s, if I recall. He wrote many books, but one of the things he talked about in terms of being successful is, and of course it was written towards men, to be able to transmute that energy into business, or to transmute that energy into your career, or into a goal. So to use that energy in a positive way. And so one can use that energy.
Right. So in other words, we can use, by learning those sexual skills or those sexual techniques, esoteric techniques, we can actually use that in order to become better scholars, do better in school, and also to become star athletes, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's nothing more than that. That's one of the greatest energies of the human body is actual sexuality. And from what I've read from Raja Yoga, they actually teach you how to tame this lion, how to tame this energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
In order to boost your other facilities. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that we're talking with you today. Now, a lot of people, you said, what's the thing about Raja Yoga? What can it really be used for? Well, we know a lot of times over in India, we've had yogic masters that they'll be able to calculate these mathematical problems inside their heads, and they'll be able to do great means of physical strength and everything, just because they learned how to access this power or this energy inside their body. Can you tell us more about that?
So everything in the universe is really available to us. So let's just think of it this way, that we are made out of star particles. So the same power that fuels the sun fuels us. The same power in creation, such as a hurricane or a tornado or a volcano eruption. These are all natural forces. But these same forces, access to these same forces, are also inside of us. We are one. So when the great masters talk about we are one with the universe, we are one with these abilities and these powers. So it appears that many of these yogis do superhuman feats. What they've been able to do is channel this energy, this free-flowing energy, which is everywhere. It's in nature. It's all around us. It's not, we are taught that it's something outside of us, but it's learning how to tap inside of us and to be able to use these energies. So these yogis have been able to, one, the mastery of their breath, to control their breathing, slow their heart rate, control their vital forces and their energies through techniques. So once you've learned to master that yourself, then you're able to master these other energies, to be able to call them forth, to be able to pull a card. And we do know that individuals in a crisis, we do know of many where people have had superhuman strength, normal people been able to, lift a car or to push something 3 or 4 times their weight when they were in a crisis situation, when they didn't panic.
Mm-hmm.
So we do know that these energies are available. They're available to us. It's just learning how to tap into those powers, and then also to not just but to manifest things. As we're talking about athletic performance or getting good grades, you can also use this same energy to be able to harness your ability to learn many different subject matters, or to learn complex subject matters,
Mm-hmm.
and to make it appear as if it's very easy, when what you're really learning to do is just to be able to use more parts of your mind, more parts of your brain.
And that's what Raja Yoga teaches you how to do.
Yes, I think the outcome or the effects of many of these techniques definitely expands expands awareness, expands consciousness. When you expand consciousness, you expand a brain power.
Mm-hmm.
You expand your mental capacities. But it is a holistic venture. It is mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to work on all levels, and that's the beauty of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
It works on all those levels. For example, if we just take the physical aspect of yoga, the asana, yoga is one of the few, if you can use the term exercise or practices, that affects just on the physical level, it affects beneficially the circulatory system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The respiratory system,
Mm-hmm.
the muscular system,
Mm-hmm.
the skeletal system,
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
and what's also most important that no other system does is the endocrine system, which is the glandular system. So you can positively affect the total being of a human being through these practices. You
Mm-hmm.
can learn how to balance your emotions, expand your mind, your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You also learn to tap into different energy centers, which we haven't even really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
In yoga, we talk about 7 energy systems. There are actually more, but they talk about 7 chakras or
Mm-hmm.
7 energy systems. And when you learn to move the energies up these systems, you move into higher forms of consciousness, such as when you move into the heart chakra, you come into the love, the
Mm-hmm.
compassion
Mm-hmm.
for yourself and everyone. You come into a greater sense of kindness, generosity. You definitely begin to have a sense that you and your neighbor are one.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, a lot of the great yogis, they were full of compassion and love.
Mm-hmm.
They taught love, that God, if you want to use that term, or
Mm-hmm.
the Creator is love, that
Mhm.
all creation is created out of love. So
Mhm.
you move to those higher centers, you begin to experience a deeper a sense of a connection, that all things are connected, from the tiniest atom
Mm-hmm.
or cell
Mm-hmm.
to to everything.
Mm. Mm.
So as above as below, so as below above. So the cell, when we look into the atom, it's like a hologram of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that's in the cell or the atom is also in the universe, so which is within us. We're made of 70 trillion plus cells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's nice. So how would we use let's go over the universal model, please, for that we
Okay.
was going over before. What was the first stage, and how does it relate? How we're going over the universal model for learning, and how does it relate to the high school and college system? And the reason that we're going through this, everyone, is to so you can really get an idea of how what's going on from school. So we look from kindergarten to fourth grade is like what we call preparation?
The preparation stage, correct.
And then from middle school, which is from 5th grade to 8th grade, that would be presentation. And then from high school, which would be from 9th grade to 12th grade, would be what? Practice. And then from in college, which is a 4-year degree, would be a what?
Performance stage.
It'd be a performance stage. Now, I want everybody out there who's watching the video and also listening to realize that isn't it kind of amazing that everything is blocked into 4 years? Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, it's 4. Yeah, if you look from 5 from middle school, which runs from grades 5 to 5 to 8, correct?
Right.
Okay, that's 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 4. When you look at high school, that's 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 4. When you look at college, 4-year degree.
Correct.
So everything for each one of those stages is actually blocked into a 4-year block. All right. So if we was to take that, if we was to keep understand that, and it was apply the universal principle of learning, the very first thing that we have is preparation. So what does it say? What does it say in the accelerative learning model for preparation that we need to focus on? And that's in kindergarten.
So let me just backtrack. I don't know if our listeners kind of know we're on the same page, but some of this information we're talking about comes out of a concept of super learning. And this super learning concept came from Russia, from a Bulgarian gentleman who basically studied techniques of Raja Yoga.
There you go.
And these techniques, he wrote actually the book was written by 2 women, and I forget their names. I'll have to look them up. But these 2 women looked at the work of this Russian or Bulgarian scientist and began to apply these techniques to write this book called Super Learning. And so what we're talking about is from another book, which is called Accelerated Learning, which also uses this information. So I just wanted to kind of give it a little bit of a backdrop so people kind of can follow it a little bit. And so one of the things it talks about in this particular book called Accelerated Learning, which you, Malik, turned me on to, I was aware of the super learning, but someone has taken the technique and they have refined it a little better to be able to use it in a learning environment. So one of the things that they talk about in preparation is what? Arousing the learner's interest, right?
Right.
Giving them positive feelings.
Right.
And that is crucial. One of the things that they have discovered is that when a person is in a positive state, they are relaxed, they learn more. When they are stressed or demeaned or talked down to, they are in a sort of a negative emotional state, and learning kind of shuts down, which is not surprising when you understand cells. And I'm kind of digressing. I'm going to come back to that because this is an important point. In cell growth, we have 2 modes. Okay, we have growth, or we have fight or flight. So when we are in fight or flight, the digestive system shuts down because the way we are the development of human beings based upon from our DNA and our ancestry. So it's like we needed to be able to run or to fight a wild animal or to get out of the way of a wild animal where there was danger. So when that was the case, all the energy and the blood needed to flow to all the peripheral organs to run, to get out of there. That's why it's called fight or flight. So digestion, anything needed for cell repair or cell growth, all the energy is diverted.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are in a state of fight or flight, and what's interesting, this fight or flight these days, it could be perceived. You don't necessarily have to be in an actual physical danger. All you have to do is perceive physical danger, and your body begins to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your body cannot grow when you're constantly in a state of stress, fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So many of our folks in our community are in a constant state of siege, stress. So it's very hard for them to learn. So, but when you're in growth mode, you're at a state where you're in a positive environment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're in that state, your body, your cells naturally grow.
Mm-hmm.
Your immune system is strong. But when you're in fight or flight, your immune system shuts down. So these are emotions like fear, anger, grief, jealousy, all these negative emotions. So when they talk about preparation, that first stage, they're talking about being in a state that's optimal for learning. One is positive suggestions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Having clear, setting clear and meaningful goals. I'm just kind of reading it. But one of the things it talks about is about raising curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking for young people, they want to be inspired. They want to be curious about learning. And one of the things you must create is a positive physical environment.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing you really got to create is a positive emotional environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is a positive social environment.
Mm-hmm.
So these are key in terms of setting up the environment for children to learn.
That's the foundation.
Right. So, you gotta calm people's fears. If they're struggling about food, shelter, and clothing, they're not in a positive environment.
Mm-hmm.
They got to also remove talks about learning barriers, okay? Because we know that children, and not only children, but human beings learn different ways. Some of us are audio,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of us are visual, and some of us are kinesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I've had this conversation with a colleague over dinner once, and some people can do okay. They're more visual and audio alert. But what if you're a kinesthetic person?
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at today's children, where they're hyperactive, they're on Ritalin.
Mm-hmm.
There's particularly for young boys, their energy is a natural thing for them to be able to move. But if they are told to sit down and shut up, all the time, it creates a difficult learning environment for many of our children.
Mm-hmm.
So we also want to arouse the curiosity for people to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and getting people involved, students involved at an early age, and setting up these environments is very, very, very crucial.
Well, super.
Because we're talking at what age from 1 to 4.
Yeah, kindergarten to 4. So how does Raja Yoga help to increase interest in the preparation phase?
So one of the things that's been going on for many years, I remember in the 80s, we were teaching, some of my colleagues were teaching meditation and yoga
Mm-hmm.
in Montessori schools in this 1 through 4th grade. We would establish something called quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with many of these institutions, when you use the word back then, the word meditation, it was bad. People got fearful
Mm-hmm.
because of religious connotations. It was
Mm-hmm.
some foreign religion. But basically what we're learning as children is to quiet their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? To quiet their mind. And to focus.
Mm-hmm.
To focus and to breathe.
Mm-hmm. And it worked too, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It quieted the children down and get them to focus. But we also had a time where there was a time for activity for children to actually to burn that energy. because they are active. So that's where the physical education is, or we taught some of the yoga postures. That's where some of the yoga asanas come in. And children are so flexible at that age. So, getting them to do the physical postures. And then we have the quiet time where we quiet them down. We play some soft music to quiet their mind. And you'd be amazed. Oftentimes, it's just for 5 minutes. And then it can extend to 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and on and on. So each part of the day, they would, the presentation each day, we get them to sit a little longer. And so, one, they're at a peaceful state. So when their mind becomes quiet, they're more relaxed. They're more receptive to learn.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay the pharmaceutical company, for that Ritalin and all that.
Which is, really messing up and killing our children.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So we use a technique like quiet time, which you help develop with at Montessori schools. That will help to increase a sense of fun or interest in learning. Correct?
Yeah, and children have a natural curiosity, and everything is really fun. And the beautiful thing about children at their age, they're in the now. They're not worrying about some bills to pay, or they're in the now. So you use that energy in the now by introducing different things. You ask their permission. Okay, can we sit quietly now? And you get them to play a game. So you use games to get them to. We're going to play a game called Quiet Time. So the kids get excited about quiet time. Okay. Or we're going to play a game called yoga. And so we're going to do physical movement. So using games was a big thing, as I recall back then.
Okay.
And still is today, used in education.
Super. So from kindergarten to 4th grade, now we've increased their drive, their thirst for learning. They have a desire for learning. Now what usually happens is we go to middle school. Middle school is 5, 6, 7, and 8, and that's where we lose most of our students. Okay, people right. When they get to middle school, it's like, all right, kindergarten, you got the time of your life. And then when you get to middle school, it's like everything goes. You lose that environment, that safe environment. You lose that, people don't pay as much attention to you. They just say they don't love you and all that other type stuff like they did back in kindergarten. You're no longer anybody's treasure and all that other type stuff. It is very interesting what happens once we get to middle school. But middle school is the time, learning how to be an adult during that time. Middle school, according to Universal Model, is the time for what? Preparation?
Preparation. It's a time in which we help learners encounter new learning material in ways, of course, we want to do it in ways that are interesting and enjoyable. They're relevant. And the key is also they're multi-sensory. As opposed to the way in which I went to school is, very much is rote learning. And, that may work for memorization. That may work for some students, but it doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't work for everybody. Now, that's the stage that a person should learn how to sharpen the axe. Preparation on the basics. The first stage from kindergarten is the interest in learning, or you doing your push-ups and stuff in order to learn how to chop something. Second stage is like you sharpen the axe because you're about to chop down the forest or whatever. But I believe from 8th to from 5, 6, 7,
5 to 8, right?
5 to 8 is the time you should be taught these super learning techniques because you're mature enough to be able to handle it. And that includes the speed reading. That includes really seriously getting down into meditation and holding it for longer periods of time.
Right. And you just
but you're kind of breaking up.
The base of the spine. Which deals with repetition, which deals with growth, which deals with reaction. Look at reptiles, what your reptile development is, stimuli, they respond to stimuli. And then you have the limbic brain, or the midbrain. So within the midbrain that's where we learn things like socialization, cooperation with others. We also call it the mammalian brain, the mammal brain. So, mammals are very social creatures, unlike reptiles. They're kind of like, they kind of stay by themselves.
Right. Now, a lot of people, parents and stuff, if you're listening out there, also students, just realize middle school is actually giving you all the skills where you should focus on in order for you to, once you hit high school, to be able to be that star scholar or that star athlete at that particular time. And this is where Raja Yoga actually would come in very well. You was telling me how when you first started yoga that it helped to increase your grades in college.
I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to talk about that, but I just wanted to finish the part about, and the third thing is the neocortex. That's where the higher parts of the brain is, problem solving. And so a child really doesn't develop into his neocortex until, when they get to be like 5 or 4. That's when, they start to go to kindergarten.
Right.
Okay? And that's beginning the development of that part of the brain. Reasoning, learning right from wrong, all that begins to kick in. So I just wanted to add that, and that's why that stage is critical.
Okay, could you, for those 3 stages of the brain, for the limbic, reptilian, and neocortex, could you review that right quick again?
Okay, so we have at the base of the spine, we call it the reptilian brain, and so that basically deals with simple things like fight or flight. That's where that information is held. Rote memory, memorization. Those skills, those skills come into being. When you think of a reptile is really non-social. They react to stimuli. This is why, for example, you would tell children certain things and you ask them, do they understand? But no, they don't understand. They respond to stimuli. So, that's learning that right or wrong, or at least when I grew up, that was the stimuli, was the spanking. You learn that fire is hot. So you learn in that stage, and then the second stage is like you learn to share. Okay, that's what socialization. That's the limbic brain. That's where those skills come in. We call the second part of the second circuit. You learn to socialize, you learn to work well with others. And of course, we know that when those centers are not developed, then we have people who are later in life who are sociopaths. They do not have any feelings whatsoever. They're more like a reptile. But then we have the neocortex, which is the gray matter. That's where we really get into the higher part, the bigger part of the brain. And so yoga definitely affects different centers of the brain. So for example, let's take martial arts. Okay, in martial arts, if the rote repetition of a movement or a strike, you might do it 100 times, right? You're actually developing neural pathways but it's very rote, very basic. 1, 2, 3, 4. You learn that. That's all basically in the reptilian brain. Okay, that's not problem solving. That doesn't come later. But you learn that in those stages, you learn the basics of blocking, striking, and then it's later on as you gradually go into the martial arts systems that then you sort of go into how to work with an opponent, how to sense an opponent, how to move with an opponent. Then the next thing is what we call the neocortex, which is problem solving. Okay. Creatively respond to, say, someone who is throwing a punch, and you're in a situation where maybe you can't use one hand, and you have to creatively figure it out. That's where the neocortex, that higher sense of integrating those things, come in. So I'm just using it with martial arts. Come in. But let's just say in terms of we're going back to yoga. So in yoga, we would say the reptilian brain would correspond to the lower chakras. Okay. The lower chakras, the base chakras in the spine, the sexual centers in the spine. The lower 3 chakras, let's just say, would correspond to the reptilian would be the first chakra. The second chakra would correspond to the midbrain or the limbic system, where we're integrating, we're learning to socialize with others. And then the third, we beginning to just getting to that higher center, where we learn about willpower, using our will to affect things, using willpower to create change. So it is also in yoga where we talk about those levels. So there's different masteries to learn how to develop certain energy systems or chakra systems to begin to be able to master certain situations in life, or learning situations as well. So that's when the asanas, the physical postures, the pranayama, the breathing techniques come into being, because then we get into accessing the right and the left parts of the brain, okay, which happens, of course, in the higher centers of the neocortex. But learning to access those higher parts of the brain, which yoga can help one access those higher parts of the brain, because when you're learning to do yoga, one, you're learning to reduce your stress. One of the outcomes is you're learning how to breathe. You're learning to control your heart rate, your respiration. These are just natural things that happen in the consequence of practicing yoga.
Okay. Well, in this presentation stage, what we call middle school, if you was to work with a person from 5th to 8th grade, could you help them to become by the time they reach high school, would they gain the abilities through your program to make straight A's in school and become a star athlete?
I would say yes. One of the things that my own personal story was that I was always a very good student in school. I was always an A and B student. But when I went to college, well, actually, in those adolescent years, those are the interesting years, because I could have went a different path, even though I was a and B student. Of course, you have pressures outside of school, that peer pressure that can get you into trouble and derail your career, which you don't know about, because at that age your friends are really super important. You think they know everything. So after getting through the adolescent period, I went on to college, and it was at that point that I discovered yoga. I took my first yoga class as a freshman in college, and I was the only African American that I knew back then, for about another 15, 20 years, that I met another black person of color that was actually into yoga. But I was taking those classes then. I remember I studied Hatha yoga, and I started taking my first introduction to Kundalini yoga, which I'll get into a little later, just another system of yoga. But as I was practicing these yoga, what I noticed was that my grades began to get better. I went from an A, B student to an A student. I had like a 3.8 GPA.
Dang.
And I was on the dean's list. And the only thing that I can equate that to that was different in my life was that I started studying and practicing yoga. And what's interesting is that because I didn't know anybody like me who was practicing yoga, so by the time in my second year came around, I wasn't going to those classes much anymore. I didn't have any other friends that I could go and practice with. So I stopped practicing yoga as much, and my grades dropped.
Okay.
My grades dropped. But when I was practicing it seemed like every day or every other day, my focus, my concentration was very accurate. It was very right on, and I was able to study longer, and I was able to retain information a lot longer.
Okay, so by going in your program from the ages from grades from 5 to 8, you definitely be able to help them to get on the honor roll and become a star athlete. You really believe you can do that within a 4-year period of time?
We could definitely teach them some techniques and skills. Of course, it's all up to the student. The student must apply them, and we can lead the horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink.
I got that right.
So they have to be willing to put the time in, just like anything else. They have to put the time in, and if they put the time in, they will definitely see the results.
Yeah, just like lifting weights. I definitely believe that. So
put the time in.
If somebody out there who's listening want to put you to the test, Gauguin, how would they get in contact with you?
Well, they can email me at GAGANJII@earthlink.net. I'll repeat that again. That's Gauguin. That's GAGANJII@earthlink.net, or they can give me a call on my phone at 704-737-2326. That's 704-737-2326.
Okay, now when they participate in your program of Raja Yoga, what exactly courses will they be taking? What's the curriculum look like? What does the curriculum look like?
Well, we're gonna start with teaching them basic yoga. We're gonna start the physical body, going through the physical asanas. We're gonna teach them breathing techniques. We're gonna teach them meditation and concentration techniques. These things will begin to sharpen the mind, and then we can apply them to certain subjects. One of the things that me and you were talking about before the show in terms of super learning, one of the things that has come out of this super learning is that when you can put the body in a very relaxed state and then introduce positive reinforcement, that the subject or the person will definitely learn quicker and faster. One, they have a better sense about themselves. They feel good about themselves. They feel positive. The second is that the use of music with the super learning, what this gentleman from Bulgaria discovered, he used Baroque music. He played this Baroque music in the background while someone read a particular subject matter, and this information, because the body was relaxed, and once the mind is relaxed and the body's relaxed, the information can seep into the subconscious mind, and once it goes into the subconscious mind, it's like a sponge. You retain it.
Okay, so
they use this technique, but we've also found that reggae music works as well, and the reason that the Baroque and the reggae music work is because it's at a certain beats per minute, and those beats usually is 60, whereas if you look at current rap music or other musics, it's at a beat rate of over 100. And this type of music also makes it very difficult for one to learn, and it disrupts the mind. And so using these slower, this music at a much lower beat rate actually opens you up to relaxation and deeper learning.
All right, that sounds super. Well, everyone out there, you definitely heard him, Mr. Gauguin Hunter. Raja yoga instructor here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He can help you to release your brain's potential, both in sports and also in the educational field, in order that you can really make a difference out in the world abroad. So again, my name is Malik L. Train, host of Awareness Talk. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being on the show, Gagan.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, definitely. And everybody out there who's listening, please put Gagan to the test. Everyone, have a wonderful night.